What's up guys, Houndish here, and today we're back with some Destiny 2 news, updates, and more for the first time in 2020. So initially, if we haven't caught up yet, Happy New Year! And in this final week of quiet before the quests and the roadmap starts rolling again, we've got some teasers, upcoming fixes, and Bungie respond to some feedback about seasonal content, give insights about armor stat rolls, RNG, and a bunch of other stuff. But also, we're going to talk about the Empyrean Foundation, some upcoming upgrades and quests, as well as objectives and rewards, many of which look pretty interesting, and there are a few tips and things worth preparing for, which could be really useful as well. So guys, as always, if you enjoyed the video, feel free to get subscribed and turn on notifications so I can keep you up to date. But now, let's get into it. And so first up, since we've been in the holiday downtime, DMG does point out that This Week at Bungie will return next week on January 9th. I believe before the holidays started they said they'll have a small update, not necessarily coming with huge announcements or anything like that, although we will have to wait and see. But on the subject of our roadmap and upcoming content, Robbie Stevens from Bungie did say it's a new year with new exotics and a few surprises right around the corner. Surprises, you say? Of course we'll have to wait and see, but there is some potential for some pretty interesting stuff to happen, and we're going to cover some of the upcoming content which may indeed house some of those secrets. But for a couple of brief updates first, Bungie are investigating the problem with the Green with Envy Gambit quest. Basically, there's a problem where that quest isn't progressing, and so it's something Bungie know about, and hopefully that'll be fixed shortly. And in the next update, the January hotfix, Bungie have said that they aim to fix the Eververse, never Eververse ending Eververse flashing icon in the tower that we've had since the start of the season, but that they should also be tackling the issue with the European Dead Zone obelisk, and potentially a couple of other things. So I will keep you posted when we get additional details about that. But now, for some of the content we're going to get over the next couple of weeks. Of course, we have a couple of quests on the roadmap that we know a few things about, but one of the really interesting elements for the season is the Empyrean Foundation. So we do have some additional details about what the event will do, and some potentially important things to know and prep for. It's possible that this could result in an exotic quest or something like that if we're lucky, but otherwise there are triumphs needed for seals and so on. So initially we get a quest on February 4th to kill Inotam, Oblivion's Trone, and that'll be the new Sundial boss that we get on the same day as the Empyrean Foundation. So it looks like that could be part of the process. But following that, we can see a series of Empyrean Foundation objectives. Now, some of these are hidden triumphs for Season 9, so we should give a mild spoiler alert initially, but for one of the Restoration triumphs, there is a listing to donate 5,000 polarized fractaline. And yes, you did hear me correctly, that's currently what's listed in the database, and this could potentially turn out to be a significant part of a quest. Remember, if we look back to the Tribute Hall and Bad Juju, there are potentially a few similarities here, and we also possibly have a hidden exotic heavy weapon for the season in the database, but of course none of that is guaranteed. However, the 5k requirement will certainly be a thing according to Triumphs, so bear that in mind, and eventually we'll be able to max out or fully restore the Foundation, and we can see from another Triumph, Torchbearer, that we're going to be rewarded with the Lighthouse Sun Shader, so potentially a pretty interesting link to Trials there. And as far as I know, the Empyrean Magistrate is connected with the Sunbreakers, who are also strongly linked to Mercury, and were followers of Osiris as we learned from D1 if I'm not mistaken, so there is a sort of logical story link to everything that's going on here, and this could potentially be a story build-up for Season 10. On top of this, people have spoken about the return of Trials, which as we know, is quite possible. And it's interesting as well, when we look at Torchbearer, we can see, complete the Empyrean restoration effort and light the beacon. And if you recall when Saint 14 returned to the tower, he did actually tip us off about the beacon at the Empyrean Foundation. So that's curious, and we don't know all of the details just yet, but it certainly looks like it's going to be a significant part of the story, as well of course as potentially housing other rewards. There are a number of different items linked to donating to the Foundation, so we can see initially that when you donate Fractaline, it'll actually progress all held Time Lost weapon bounties, so that's pretty cool. Not sure how much progress we'll actually get, but if you had a few bounties at once, it could be a pretty good way of boosting them up. There's also an item called Empyrean Light, light generated by the Tower Obelisk and the power it gathers from other obelisks. This may be used to fuel the Empyrean restoration effort, or to purchase buffs, consumables, and restoration pursuits generated weekly. And so while we have the Tower Obelisk, we have the various different planetary obelisks, Saint 14, and even Osiris, it's possible, based on that description, that there could be another vendor inventory or menu for the Empyrean Foundation itself, which once again, wouldn't be dissimilar to the Tribute Hall. But there's also an exotic item linked specifically to the event, and this is the light-fused Fractaline. Structures fused with light as a byproduct of the ongoing Empyrean restoration effort, used to increase the resonance rank of any obelisk by 1 full level during Season 9. And so partly, Empyrean Foundation does behave as a kind of catch-up mechanic, or a fast way to access a bunch of the loot in the season, but the fact that we have items like the light-fused fractaline, which can be used to actually bump up an obelisk by an entire level, kind of suggests that having obelisks upgraded, as well as that bonus currency to turn in to the Empyrean Foundation, could potentially be important for accessing rewards that it might house. And if it doesn't house some kind of secret crazy reward, then it's more than likely going to be a story piece that also mechanically serves as a kind of way to fast track through some of the Season of Dawn content. However, my personal guess is that there is probably some hidden reward in there that'll kind of be the ultimate reason to be doing that stuff, but we'll have to wait and find out. Otherwise, we do have exotic quests coming up, which also have triumphs, so once again, spoiler alert, but for Devil's Ruin, there's a triumph this season to travel to Twilight Gap and collect the materials required to repair Devil's Ruin. And so for that quest coming up next Tuesday, one of the main parts is actually going to be kind of a mission segment, but also there is a catalyst for Devil's Ruin, and it looks like this one is more than likely going to become available during the season, as well, of course, as exotic ornaments. So Devil's Ruin will get its own ornament, which presumably will be featured prominently on the front page of Eververse on Tuesday when that quest goes live. And it is a pretty cool looking thing right there, so yeah, looking forward to try that one. But then there's also a triumph to acquire the Bastion, which is a quest we'll get later on in January. That one also has a catalyst listed, although we can't see the specific bonuses that it grants. And then there is an ornament for this one as well, so just an additional look at some of the things associated with upcoming exotics. But otherwise, I'm really curious to see what the Empyrean Foundation is about, and once again, I would love to hear any of your thoughts down below. Now though, let's get into some additional news roundups, feedback, updates, and more. Initially, Cosmo has recognized that Symmetry currently has a known issue where it can randomly stop firing in full auto. Bungie are looking into a fix at the moment, but last time we spoke about this a couple of weeks ago, I'm not sure it had actually been identified as a known problem, so hopefully now that is one that can be fixed soon. And DMG also recognized previously that Polaris Lance is bugged, and firing a shot after activating the exotic bonus can actually cancel the exotic bonus out before it detonates on a target. So those are two potential fixes coming up shortly. However, here, Cosmo gave an insight on armor stat rolls, which is pretty interesting. So folks were suggesting that you could farm for armor with high stats in all kinds of different activities. And Cosmo did point out that currently all gear in the game does have a chance to roll with high stats. So there is a rare chance, for example, that you could get some 60 plus stat armor from Titan, but it does go on to say that with Raid and Iron Banner gear, it is weighted towards giving out higher stats, but also has a chance to give low stats. And it's safe to say there definitely is a fair amount of randomization in it, but I do agree that endgame content should have improved chances to give us good stat rolls, right? Maybe that's something they can tweak in the future. On the subject of tweaking XP and Season Pass related things, Cosmo collected feedback from a thread on Reddit about bounties and XP sources. He said, "We'll share your thoughts with the team, but so far the main points I'm seeing are to firstly make more activities reward XP, secondly, allow bounties to be picked up in orbit or in one location, and thirdly, to increase the amount of bounties that we can carry." Somebody does point out that if they increase the XP gains from activities, of course there is a risk of players AFK farming that, and so he adds that they will be bearing that one in mind. Other players gave feedback about items that shouldn't be featured in the Season Pass, so initially, the big bundles of Glimmer, secondarily things like Legendary Shards, the Legendary Engrams, and Raid Banners. The general complaint is that these kinds of items are replacing potentially much better items, like Ascendant Shards, Prisms, Bright Dust, cosmetic or even Eververse drops. And I totally agree with that. However, I actually quite like when you get little glimmer bonuses or shards or whatever in the Season Pass, but maybe that should be kind of a third layer because they are very standard currencies. I don't know, let me know what you guys think. But Cosmo does say that this is our second stab at the reward structure of the pass, and we're definitely looking to continue to improve it season over season. So hopefully all of this is stuff that Bungie will take on board. But then on the subject of Iron Banner, somebody asked if we'll see any other PvP modes featured for Iron Banner. Cosmo said Iron Banner is currently planned to continue to be the special version of Control with the lockdown mechanic. Curious to hear what you guys think about that. But he also added that they're passing along Iron Banner feedback about the quest, especially quest steps like the rocket launcher kills, and essentially things feeling like they take a little bit too long to complete. There has been quite a lot of conversation about that one, but once again, feel free to give us your thoughts below. Somebody suggested that all dungeons should drop pinnacle rewards. That would include Shattered Throne and Heroic Dungeons, and DMG said that he's seen this feedback for both dungeons and older raids, and so potentially that's something that Bungie could look at adjusting in the future. In terms of other feedback and potential future changes, somebody said, why do we have to repeat all 5 waves of Altar of Sorrows, but can repeat just waves 6 and 7 for Escalation Protocol? And DMG said that's a very good question. He'll forward it to the team and see if it could be a future quality of life update for that mode. There was also a really interesting conversation about Bungie's "you had to be there" concept of kind of rolling out certain bits of content in the game that happen in a specific time window. And essentially players were pointing out that of course a lot of Destiny's best content and those really memorable things really were surprises and not stuff that we knew about on roadmaps initially, but also weren't necessarily timed events or things that had to be done in a specific season, right? And DMG did point out that on the most part there are technical and developmental limitations involved where they cannot continue to support an additional activity with every single release. He adds that when they say support, this could be translated as numerous different things, supporting bug fixes for every release, refreshing the rewards for activities to keep them relevant and engaging, or even the general install size of Destiny 2 as new things are added season over season. He also adds that narratively, this gives the team opportunities to create world-changing experiences, with the transition from season to season handing over much more logically than what we saw in the annual pass. It does point out that when they did that with the Undying Mind, and attempting to kind of make the final assault the story endpoint for Season of Undying, that didn't necessarily work as well as they intended because there was a delay between the continuation of that story. And I think to an extent, obviously, that is true, so DMG does finish by saying there is no intention to force these moments by removing content. We have things to improve on to make some of these moments more impactful, and the team has been digesting a bunch of this feedback as they develop future seasons for Year 3, so some pretty interesting insights right there. And especially with the potential for the Empyrean Foundation to actually be a major story piece in the transition between two seasons, and in general the story that we have right now in the game, it'll be interesting to see how this season is handed over to Season 10. And yes, hopefully it will be a little bit better than what we saw between Season 8 and 9. But for today, guys, that's everything we've got to talk about in the video. So, as always, give me your thoughts on anything we've spoken about, any stuff you're desperate for Bungie to fix in some of the new year updates we're going to get. Thoughts and speculation on the Empyrean Foundation would be interesting as well, and any potential rewards for that. Otherwise, I'll be keeping you posted on the new content that we get next week in the form of the Exotic Quest and the Legend Sundial mode. But if you've enjoyed this video, a rating is very much appreciated, and if you're new to the channel, be sure to get subscribed so I can keep you up to date with everything related to the game. Otherwise though, thanks for tuning in, guys, and whatever you get up to, I hope you have an awesome day.